Previously, in Hedge Knights, the community planned to harvest the Nutrifungus early to free up space for proper farm crops. Tangier completed the new prayer room with added columns. Megahoof discovered that the hybrid extract worked to stabilize the uprooted salix tree and packed up the caravan quickly to return back to the keep with the good news. Megahoof observed that the tree was healthy and absorbed pollution, so he made 2 more hybrid extracts. The farm was sown with apple trees, lentils, garlic, onions, wheat, and heelroot. Madsy and Dave ventured out to obtain 2 more salix trees with the additional extract, bringing the total in the glade to 6. Episode 20, Renovations. The members of the Bison Glade were excited about what it meant to have additional salix trees growing in their glade. Megahoof called a meeting in the new prayer room around Arauco's new sculpture. For many seasons, the keep hadn't significantly expanded, and this was largely due to the fact that the pollution couldn't be absorbed by only 3 salix trees. But now with 6, they could expand once again. Sapo proposed that they build a proper standalone kitchen with root cellar to keep the food fresh in the warmer months. Arauco and Lazarus thought that maybe a standalone workshop to separate their living area from the heat and fumes of the smelter and furnaces would be a welcomed project. Megahoof and Judea proposed a bison pasture, for they were cooped up in their tiny pen far too long. Some of the other adlets asked about possibly getting their own personal bedrooms, and quickly everyone agreed that that was the most popular suggestion. The meeting adjourned, and everyone was encouraged to work towards the shared goal. The plan was to convert the fungal farm into individual bedrooms, but this would require a considerable amount of timber, slate, crop harvesting, construction, masonry, mining, stone cutting, and cleaning of the polluted soils. The main farm would then in the winter be converted back to Nutrifungus if the bison needed extra food. Megahoof realized that there wasn't enough wheat milled to make bread and handled it himself. He told the other adlets to start using the windmill. They had plenty of hay in storage, and there was no risk of the bison going hungry. Tangier realized that the keep was rather low on coal and planned to head to mine the remainder of the coal in the southern mountains. Soon they'd run out of surface coal. Tangier thought maybe she could tag along on the next excursion to do some mining to make sure the adlets had plenty of coal, especially for the hearths in the winter. Sapo had requested that the pantry get expanded to make room for additional Mackie meals. It was a small enough project that the other adlets agreed to finish it before embarking on the main keep renovations. Megahoof asked Sapo to relocate the northeast salix tree to behind their walls. They knew that the salix trees could survive a brief period of uprooting. Megahoof made it clear not to move all 3 trees just yet. He wasn't sure that the trees could be uprooted and replanted without hybrid extract applied, and didn't want to jeopardize half the trees needlessly. Sapo said that he would handle it in the morning. The keep's main hall was disheveled and disorganized. Most of the shelves were constructed urgently to address one crisis or another. Soon the keep would be thrown into chaos again. Renovations have a way of ruining organization. The Adlets thought it might be a good idea to try to tidy and organize as they expanded and cleaned. The main hall of the keep would soon cease to be a shared living quarter and could serve as a dedicated space for a kitchen, a dining hall, and a workshop instead. The Adlets carefully dismantled walls so some of the materials could be reused for construction. Sections of the fungal farm were slated to be torn down, and those bricks and stones could be immediately used elsewhere. Sapo wrapped up making one more batch of bread and then headed northeast to the tree. With the help of a simple sledge and a few willing bison, he hauled the tree into the keep walls and replanted it beside the first hybrid extracted treated salads. Sapo told Meghoof that the northeast tree had been uprooted and replanted within the walls, next to the other tree, and everything had gone without a hitch. Meghoof told Sapo he'd inspect the tree later in the day to make sure it remained healthy and could still absorb pollution, because if it was unaffected by the brief uprooting and short move, the other two trees could be relocated within the walls as well. Slowly planting a perimeter of trees around their keep would help prevent encroaching pollution from affecting their keep ever again. Tangier was nearly finished mining what little remained of the coal in the southern hills, and would need to mine slate to provide the stonecutters for fresh material for masonry. The glade had been scoured nearly clean of slate. The material needed for the renovations would have to be quarried from nearby mountains. This would also be an opportunity to show Madzi how to mine. She had told Tangier she was interested, but Tangier, up until now, never had the time to teach Madzi the unusual skill she knew so well. Meghoof inspected the tree that Sapo had transplanted earlier that day. He saw firsthand that it was still capable of absorbing pollution and hadn't been damaged by the transplantation. He suspected that the trees rapidly disintegrated out of their usual environment, much like a fish out of water would soon die. But if you place them back into the soil soon enough, no lasting damage would be done. Keeping the trees inside the keep walls meant that they were protected from raiders and fires, and hauling pollution to them to be absorbed would be far easier. The windmill made short work of the wheat, especially when it was windy and stormy, like today. The plants needed the rain, and the Adlets needed the wheat ground to flour, so the rain came at a perfect time. Megoof shared the good news with Sapo that moving the tree without the extract didn't seem to harm it, and asked if he could transplant the other 2 trees as well. Sapo was delighted by the news and told Megoof once his daily chores were attended to, he'd round up some bison and reuse the sledge to move the last 2 trees within their walls. Sapo looked back at the slate-black keep and curtain walls as the hearths within cast flickering shadows through the arrow loops and vaulted windows. Through the foggy rain and with the faint glow of dawn's light, the keep looked like a haunted castle from a fairy tale. The twisted gray pine trees and orchards of lavender-hued salix trees truly completed the picture. Sapo laughed at the thought as he worked to uproot another salix tree, because their keep was the only thing not haunted in the Cotraro forest as far as he knew. Tangier finished excavating the remaining coal from the southern hills and asked Madzi if she wanted to learn how to mine. She told Madzi that they would need a lot of slate to complete the new bedrooms, and she'd be quarrying the slate from the northern hills. Madzi couldn't wait to learn and excused herself from her masonry chores. The two set off together toward the northern mountain, where Madzi would learn under the tutelage of Tangier. All of the salix trees had been transplanted inside their sturdy curtain walls. The Adlets walked the grounds of their keep and marveled at the 6 salix trees nestled within. The trees represented hope and promise of a healthier, cleaner future. They had toiled for years, struggling to hold back the tide of blight and noxious haze, and they finally had a weapon to win against the toxic creep. All of the slate bricks needed for the new bedroom walls were situated in place awaiting masons. The new wing of the keep overlapped the steam geyser, so the Adlets planned to build a special chimney to allow the geyser to outgas freely outside, because the sulfuric smell was nauseating. They tolerated the smell for the sake of keeping the fungal farm heated, but nobody would tolerate it in their own bedrooms. With the new walls constructed, it was time to remove the fungal field, which meant harvesting as much fungus as they could, and then removing the tilled fields to make way for timber floors. The Adlets had such an abundance of fungus, the trouble was it rotted quickly, so they needed to plant a lot of extra in case of shortages. Once the renovations were completed, and if enough of the soils around the keep were purified, it might even be possible to allow the bison to freely graze, negating the need for supplementary fungus. Madzi thought it would be a good idea to have a designated area to haul the slate chunks, so that once she had finished mining, she could fetch some of the chunks and bring them down for the stonecutters to cut. That would save the stonecutters an extra trip. The driving rain of the storm had passed, but what lingered was a thick fog. The Adlets were especially vigilant in the fog, for it was far more difficult to spot raid parties on the horizon, and the lost time made it difficult to muster proper defenses in case of raids. The fog hindered the archers as well. Hitting targets through fog was far less reliable, and the Adlets heavily relied upon their bows and arrows, so fog was not welcome in the glade. The vigilance paid off. Madzi and Tangier spotted an approaching raid, likely taking advantage of the fog shroud. They fled back towards the keep and shouted for the others to prepare. Bash was last seen wandering the southern hills. Judea rushed towards the southern Merlin in search of her son. Bash was sadly accustomed to raids and heard the telltale cacophony and retreated towards the keep as fast as his little legs could carry him. He had hoped he had gone unnoticed in the dim veil of fog and stayed as quiet as he could as he approached the gate. He nearly collided with his mom as he raced to shelter. Not only had he acted perfectly to the situation, but he had also cut the retaining rope on his approach, which held the bastion doors open. Judea shed tears of joy to see him safe, and told him to go find Sapo, who was guarding Shellbell within the main keep. Lazarus noticed many of the approaching raiders donned ranged weapons and were firing shots back through the arrow loops. Instead of guarding the main gate, he rushed forward to engage the archers to stop them from firing upon his friends. Despite their wounds, Dave and Madzi continued volleying arrows at the raiders. Lazarus hacked and slashed through the well-armed enemies, filling the walkway and trenches with corpses. He deflected most of the attacks with his kite shield, and the attacks he couldn't dodge or deflect were easily mitigated by his masterfully crafted armor. Sapo stayed behind to keep Shellbell and Bash safe. He could hear the victory cries of his fellow Adlets, and also their calls beckoning him for medical aid. Dave was losing a lot of blood, and Madzi had some scratches and cuts as well. He ordered them both to rest in bed so he could tend them better than field triage. The unscathed archers repositioned to the front-facing Merlins to fire upon the fleeing monsters. Despite his wounds, Dave decided to eat a quick snack. His hunger pangs were apparently greater than that of his deep leg wound. Madzi mimicked Dave as a way to show a passive defiance, though not even the arrows and pylum could bring them down. Sapo quickly tended to their wounds, while Judea cremated the corpses that filled their main gate. Upon Sapo's request, the pantry had been enlarged and could accommodate some additional shelving. He wanted to relocate most of the perishable foods to either the shelves near the bison or in the pantry, freeing up the main hall of the keep for better purposes. Megahoof took a break from researching old scriptures and journals to join the other Adlets. He'd been interested in finding new recipes for Sapo, but unfortunately most of the recipes he had uncovered were meat-based, and the Adlets weren't planning on hunting the small rodents and vermin of the glade for meat. Megahoof was curious how other communities fed themselves. Arauco came from a community that relied upon hunting, but the small game in the glade couldn't support more than just an Adlet or two, and the pollution would certainly prevent hunters from traveling long distances for game. Maybe there were more animals elsewhere outside the Gutraro forest. He vaguely remembered Arauco telling stories of strange antelope-like creatures. Perhaps if they truly managed to purify their glade, creatures would migrate back to the forest. Fog continued to blanket the keep, lasting an unusually prolonged time. The windmill barely spun, and it struggled to mill the remaining wheat, and it was difficult to discern friend from foe out in the Glade Hills. They had already been attacked once from monstrous visitors, taking advantage of the weather. Their guards were up, and bows were ready. The gambit Sappho and Lazarus took had paid off. The spring remained warm enough not to prematurely kill off the early sown lentils, onions, garlic, pumpkins, and wheat. Soon the variety of ancient seeds would come to seed-bearing maturity, and Sappho could experiment with new dishes and meals. The old walls of the fungal field were dismantled to make way for timber floors and bedroom walls, while select sections of the old wall remained to act as pillars to hold up the roof above in place. The two farmers waited as long as they could to harvest the last of the fungus to allow it to grow, but it was time to harvest. The carpenters were eager to rake out the tilled plots and construct both a stonework subfloor and hardwood flooring. Sappho's first two batches of mead were ready, and the other adlets missed being able to sip tea and eat ambrosia, so they were eager to try the sweet brew. Sappho and Lazarus planted ample tea leaves, hoping Sappho would be able to brew so much tea they could start drinking it once again. But at least for now, mead, beer, and ale was all they had. The variety of brews had spoiled the squires. Life back on the coast was far more Spartan, with only fish and fungus to eat and tea to drink. The fungal farm walls were dismantled, and the keep filled with the geyser's sulfuric smell. The constructors hadn't built this specialized chimney for the geyser, prioritizing the subfloor and flooring instead, but clearly that was a mistake, as everyone, including themselves, were disgusted by the pungent odor. They promised everyone they'd get the chimney built as soon as the southern wall was replaced from timber to stone. Madzi hadn't gotten any more skilled at wielding a pick or quarrying stone, but at least she knew the right techniques to avoid harming herself from falling debris or mishandling of tools. She enjoyed masonry and carpentry more, but didn't mind keeping Tangier company. The southern wall of the new wing of the keep urgently needed to be finished, and Jadea asked Madzi if she could handle it. Madzi was happy to shift over to masonry work and wondered if the bricks she was laying would be part of her new bedroom. Through the collective hard work of all of the Adlets, the new bedroom started to take form. The fog enshrouding the keep had lifted, and the new salix trees were quickly purifying the surrounding grounds. Life was improving here in the Bison Glade, and soon the squires would be able to offer shelter to more refugees. Thank you for watching Hedge Knights Episode 20, Renovations. If you would like to support me as a content creator, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this series with your friends. If you would like to join my gaming community on Discord, a link to Discord can be found in the description of this video. If you would like to become a Patreon patron, a link to Patreon can be found there as well. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel. I'll catch you next episode.